Tonight's guest is Dr. Richard Alan Miller, and he is a pioneer in the annals of metaphysical and paranormal exploration. Dr. Miller began working in the X-Files world of Navy Intel and the SEAL Corps, then MRU, in the late 60s. His public collaborations and research continue. As an original Black Ops team member, Miller's research in the field of paranormal began as a graduate physicist working 11 years with Navy Intel. During this period, numerous foundational papers, including a holographic concept of reality and embryotic holography, were written. His past and current writings and presentations reveal a depth of knowledge and practical experience in these three major fields. Number 1, alternative agriculture. 2, New Age physics. And finally, metaphysics. Dr. Miller now writes for Nexus magazine and is a preferred guest on internet radio. He is re-emerging at a critical time in humanity's evolution where metaphysics and the practical survival converge. Dr. Richard Alan Miller, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you on to the Freaky Friday edition of the Kev Baker Show. How are you doing, sir?
Hi. I was writing and texting. Sorry, and I'm awake. I was just going to do a little thing about this leprechaun thing. And
I got you right off the bat.
I know. I fell right into that big hole.
Don't let them fool you for a second. You're absolutely right. They're 110% Irish.
Oh, please. Yeah. We're in Glasgow, Scotland.
I thought I saw Boston there somewhere, and it didn't deal with cranberries. I'll tell you.
So welcome to the show, Doc.
My story on the undergraduate school. Hatchet courses in physics were to eliminate the men from the boys. And that's what happened in my first years. But what happened was in my freshman year at the University of Washington, they had a thing called the John Dance Lecture Series. And visiting professors were offered to teach entry-level physics while they were delivering these super-duper papers. Richard Feynman and Linus Pauling were both my chemistry and my physics professors when I first took beginning physics. That's why I'm so creepy.
Well, Doc, I was actually doing a bit of...
Now, Richard Feynman was so cool. He was animated like me. You know, this excitement is what you call inflammation, you know, where you look like I'm going to burst into flames or something. I'm so excited. I'm drooling and excited about what I'm saying. Linus Pauling was a really weird person. He made all his graduate students sit in the front row. And if any of us in the big pit, you know, these 420 people kind of thing, could ask a question he couldn't spontaneously answer, he would point to a graduate student and say, "That's your thesis topic." I couldn't believe it. So, of course, we were into the idea of trying to figure out questions that couldn't be answered. Did you know that there are, in my study, I am now encountering things that may not be known at any century. They don't
really
work. Yeah. There's information as we are now beginning to define it better with holographic systems, actually has qualities in mathematics that are similar to prime numbers. There are places in the structure of information that is kind of like entanglement of another thing that we haven't even described yet. That's what I'm beginning to, get a sense of with these new things. This new movie that is called Interstellar. At the end of the movie.
Oh yeah, that was something.
Well, what was interesting about that movie was the artistic representation of what five space might be like to someone like you, and how you would encounter it as the Akashic records, where you're in this big library. Go figure the symbolism, and trying to talk to your daughter in code by pushing books out of out of the wall, and she's not afraid because she has a temporal connection in time with you. I don't think we have a clue yet what it all means. And with that, if you want to know what's going to happen, follow Hollywood, because she would if she could.
Well, Doc, that leads me into something I was looking at today. And I was looking into a lot of your work. I'm getting a little bit of feedback there. I think that's it fine now. And I've actually come across something.
Baxter and the Secret Life of Plants.
No, it was actually to do with the X-Files. Now, I heard somebody suggesting that Fox Mulder was actually based on you. Is that true?
Well, I wrote the first workups for Fox. They were modified and used by Carter because I wouldn't move to Hollywood. And my workups were based on my work. I had huge teams. I didn't have a single forensics. I could get Dr. Carl Mote at the UW. You know, I when I went into forensics or whatever I was doing, we had a host. My team was maybe, at any given moment on a given project, I might have 20 people. We're hammering it because whenever, it wasn't like just two of us, and it was like a little thing down at the end of the office rooms, you know, in the cupboard place there where the Indians hang out. It was more like deep pockets. And when they encountered something that was paranormal, they wanted to know about it. Let me give you an example.
Well, Doc, when you say they, who is they? Is that the CIA, the government?
No,
who was it you were actually
Navy
working for?
DuPont, old man DuPont, Navy intelligence.
Okay.
Navy was always in charge of technology back then. It's changed now. But back then it was DuPont, and he reported to Rockefeller. And that was the hierarchy. It's all changed now with transnational corporations. There are corporations now that are bigger than the United States. There's one of them that's 40 times bigger, just one single company. There's probably 23, I think, that actually have budgets that are bigger than the United States. And let me give you an example. The state of Oregon annual budget is $8.4 billion. And Johnson & Johnson Wax, which is number 40th down on the company list of, you know, who's who, that's their quarterly budget. Now that means a pharmaceutical house that's 40th down on the list is 4 times larger than the state of Oregon. So when you realize that the Anunnaki are back here any minute and they want their gold, I don't have a clue on how this is all going to play. What's real? What is mythology? Cavitating processes might suggest, you know, Sitchin and Inner Earth and hobbits and whatever. You know, cavitation into the outer. There are all kinds of ways to see what's going on. They're all 4th grade. That's where we're all at, including me and my high-end, snooty technical. And even with that, doesn't mean anything. Magic, which is one of the things I got really interested in, is basically an advanced form of physics with a mystery school. Breaker 17, come on, imagine cowboys and aliens. And with that image of what in the heck is that going on? Well, what in the hell is that? That's Saturday Night Live at their very finest. And, well, what in the heck is that? You know, it's crazy. I just encountered a really cool documentary on foo fighters during World War II, 1942. I've never seen anything like that. When I was in Antarctica, the Nazi base was gone. It was there, remnants. There was other kinds of things, but I never saw any advanced technology.
So hang on a minute. You've actually seen remnants of the Nazi base in Antarctica. You have to tell us more about that, Doc.
That was one of the few projects where I wasn't lead. I was working for a woman. She was an anthropologist, just like in the movies, you know, Alien versus Predator. But it was a cavern that was more than a mile high with weather, clouds, rain, wind, and it had light. And that's why they brought me in, was the bioluminescence. They wanted answers. That will be one of the chapters in my new book, Spook Central, which is the work I did for MRU. Now, that basically, there's a whole series of things we did. We had the first artificial intelligent computer. It's called Project Paraphile. And I published it down at Claremont at the exact same time I did embryonic holography. Embryonic holography is why nobody heard of me. They came in and made that paper top secret for more than 20 years. And so when Michael Talbot did his holographic universe, nobody had heard of me because all my work was secret. And Prebrum and John Boehm's works were 10 years later, and they didn't even include biological processes. We started right out in my paper with a quote from Northrop and Burr out of Yale. And so Leonard Ravitz had done some stuff, and then there was Carl Prebrum, others that were like that. Prebrum's holonomic concepts didn't even happen for another 10 years. Mine was in 1971. And that's why when Garyaev and Popov, and what's that other guy? Finnish. He's a Finnish physicist. They're doing a thing on the biohologram. When they get nominated, I'll get a writer on that. And so I will, at some point, receive a Nobel Prize for the work in the holographic systems. How that occurred, by the way, when I was working at DuPont, I was up at the experimental research station in Wilmington, and I was walking down the hall, going to the shop to make something, and I looked into this one door that was open, and there was a three-dimensional color TV right there, 1967. I saw it, and I went into the lab to take a closer look at it, and I met a man named Gebar. He was holographic systems using film strips and using interference patterns to create a three-dimensional image. And that's where I first encountered holograms and what they are and what they might represent. Now, at that moment, it was in 3 dimensions. My paper actually took it to n dimensions. That means that a hologram is now defined as n dimensions of information in n-1 dimensions. It is a way of compacting information into or out of itself, just like a fractal. That's the math that would be used, would be the Mandelbrot, Julian May pattern systems. Information theory works with mostly, today, we use algebras. From the Clifford algebra, there's a variety of those, including ONS and some other, there are systems of the way you would group information for pattern recognition and letting the concepts of John Boehm's work, which was similar differences and different similarities. This was the constructs of the way information relates to itself. And once you start to stack that form of math together, now you have a sense of, I'm so sorry about my phone. There's nothing I can do about it except let it ring until it picks up somewhere else. Sorry.
Don't you worry about that, sir. I mean, my show, everything goes wrong in it, so that's actually not too much of a hassle at all.
I'm turning my...
Well, Joe, you've just come back, Joe, but you've
Yeah, well,
actually...
you know, dude, the whole Nazi base in Antarctica, I want to get into that so much more.
Yeah, now I can take you anywhere you guys want to go. Pretend that you're in an old diner, and at the top is this thing down at the end called Johnny Carson, and he puts this envelope up to his head and he says, Swami says, what would you like to know?
Let's start at the beginning, Doc. How did you get into all of this? Because I believe you were actually a bit of a whiz kid when it came to physics in school, and that's where you kind of rose to kind of prominence and were snapped up from. Is that correct?
I can't. Your accent is so.
Yes, I know those pesky leprechauns.
Yeah, but I love the accent. I just don't. I'm not getting all the words yet.
I think we'll have to get Joe to translate.
All right, so no, so seriously, Doc, what got you started in all this? And were you the whiz kid in school, like growing up as
I
a
never
child?
thought of myself that way. I didn't think of myself that way. In 3rd grade, they have a report card that says, Ricky is very disruptive. He asks too many questions. Actually says that on my report. I have him. And then in 4th grade, there was a woman that made me stay after school every night. See, my dad was in the military, so I traveled, and I didn't know how to read by fourth grade. I didn't read. And Mrs. Reed, metaphor, she kept me after school every night, making me read. And then in fifth grade, they thought there was something wrong with me. And so the first thing they wanted to do was give me lithium. And my mother wouldn't let them do that at all. And so then they were going to try to embarrass me by making me at noon on Wednesdays get up in the middle of my class and go for counseling. So this guy would sit there playing, I don't know, Monopoly or something, and I whip his ass. And meanwhile, he came back and said, there's nothing wrong with this kid. He's smarter than I am. That's when they first started recognizing me. Then they tried to do the next terrible thing. They tried to advance me in school. And my mom wouldn't let him do that either. So now I'm socially more apt, sort of, kind of, maybe. I am basically an idiot savant. My gift is that I have an eidetic memory. It's like I'm a 4-year-old that never became 7, and now I'm 71. What would you like to know? Everything that I read, I retain, and I'm able to cross-correlate because of information systems and the way I work my brain. All of these things, in my opinion, are trainable. Anybody can do them. It isn't about me being special. And that was the way I trained SEALs. That ESP was not that I was psychic any more than you are. You're all psychic. You have just simply culturally and personally probably blocked out most of the richness of your life. And what I'm trying to do is show you doors you can open that allow you access to broader levels of experience. That's why, like in a holographic system, there are levels of the relationship of something that you do. And at one point, up in the 4th level, everything that you do is in myth. You watch the relationship of the one thing to the other as a metaphor. Like when I repaired my 280Z, if I put a rest panel in the passenger side of the car, I replaced my passenger knee with a titanium pin. And I'm so much titanium now, by the way, my grandchildren are talking about turning me into a wind chime when I cross over. But you got to understand, I have a lot of titanium in me. And I repaired and restored my Z as a metaphor of restoring myself. I have no pain anymore. And I'll bet I'm good enough I could take any of you in a gym. Just kidding. I was
going to say, watch where you're going there, Doc.
I'm trying to say that I'm actually feeling younger and in better shape at 71 than when I was 50.
Wow.
And it's all in metaphor. It's the way you relate to yourself and your universe. It structures the water, your belief systems, cap half full, cap empty, internal landscape, that kind of thing. Once you get that part of it, you restructure your reality. That's the book I'm writing. It's called The Non-Local Mind in a Holographic Universe, How to Change the Movie.
And Doc,
believe me, it's changing right now for all of us because I'm doing it for myself. I am using myself. If I can save myself, I will have saved the world. It is a metaphor because I'm going to show you how I did it.
Wow.
And then you're going to show your children, and they're going to teach, and it'll be like a Revlon hair commercial.
Go ahead, Kev.
No, I was just going to say, but you're talking about these things with our mind, and I was listening today, and you were talking about time travel, and you were saying that time travel is actually something that we can do internally ourselves. Do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, time travel, you betcha. So I never knew there were corners in time until I was told to stand in one. The geometry known as the Necker cube of space or the diamond body, Ezekiel's vision, that diamond thing that we keep finding, dodecahedral universe that Penrose, others write about. I'll give you that for your audience. I'll upload that file to you. That is, if you envision that in your mind's eye, you essentially have a time machine, literally. And we did studies on that with the military in anesthesiology. Let me tell you where I went. And so, how did this work in a metaphor? Let me give you a metaphor of this. I'm going to give you a really cool paper here. Just 1 second. There it is. This paper right here is available in it. You can post it, everything like that. It's the foundation of what a buckyball is. And that's us fullerenes that we're now discovering.
Oh yeah, that's some amazing research. I can't wait to pick your brain on that too.
Right, we're going to stay focused on his question on time travel.
Yeah, I know. We must stay focused.
Well, good luck with that. I just
must not drift.
What? Who? Time is not real. It is a construct that is part of 4 space. And there are 5 space. And you'll notice in Interstellar, in 5 space, time was like a bunch of roads that he could sift through like a bunch of files.
Would that suggest timelines then, Doc?
That's correct. And they're down into singularities and then with intent. We'll talk about that later if you'd like. With the concept of intent, you can expand that timeline and make it more rich in its exposure of information transfer to you. Whether you did it just simply on an emotional level, or you got it up into the intellectual plane, or the 4th plane up, which is known as the archetypal plane, is that place where you are me, and I am you, and I am the walrus. Cuckoo.
Yeah, we are all one.
That's only halfway to God.
So if there's different timelines, Doc, would that mean that it does away with this grandfather paradox that we hear about? Because if you were to physically travel in time to a different timeline, that wouldn't necessarily affect you if you were to take out your own grandfather, because it's a different timeline. Or have I got that skewed?
I saw a reference less than 3 days ago on that very subject where they did an experiment. It's on physics.org. You'll find that time travel experiment where they show the grandfather clause is not valid anymore. And with that opens the construct of what a duplicate universe is, where we teleport from one point to another. Is it you or is it a copy of you? And that physics involved in that is beyond the scope of our conversation today. But if you want to play, I've got it down. I understand the physics of it enough now to suggest that what we're doing is multiverse at different dimensional levels.
Wow.
So
I think we should just leave it there, Doc. That's us just about to go out to the break. And what a point to leave that out. Multiverse.
Wow, yeah, multiverse. Yeah.
Talk about shaping up to be the best Freaky Friday ever. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be back after these short messages.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
Welcome back to the second part of tonight's Freaky Friday Transatlantic Truth Special. I'm your host, Kev Baker. Tonight I've got Joe Joseph, Martin Hardy, Johnny Whistles is back on the round table tonight, and we have got the most marvellous guest on board for you listeners out there, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. And before the break, Doc, we left it on a bit of a cliffhanger. We were getting into multiverses and things like that. We were discussing time travel. Take it away, sir. Where do you want to go with this?
Well, the idea is that each dimension has a plethora of possibilities. That means in 4 space, that means in 5 space. This then takes us into a mathematics that we haven't evolved yet. We don't have anything quite like that. The trying to do algebraic expressions, that's the easiest way to approach it. I don't have a clue how to do it. So I'll leave that to the next generation or whatever. Time travel, I think we do things with dreams. The Hopi, there's some evidence to indicate that, certain kinds of dream states do go back and rewrite history, for example. It's interesting. I don't know quite how that works, other than I'll find some links later. I don't have them. I don't want to get preoccupied running around trying to find it. There was in physics.org recently where they were able to prove the grandfather effect, where several grandfathers could be together because they're basically copies.
Now, is this a physical copy, Doc, or is it just an ethereal kind
Oh,
of
what does
copy?
a physical copy, like a double ganger, mean? I don't know. When you talk about cavitation, there is an extremely interesting book by Alan Dean Foster called Into the Out of. And that this witch doctor in Africa is sitting around doing his little witch thing, when all of a sudden there's a pop in space next to him and a demon pops out, kind of like gravity wave generators in Houston and the fog. Kind of an interesting construct of the possibilities of what the way things are structured. We have similar events here on Earth, like Skinwalker Ranch. I've been to Skinwalker Ranch. There is absolutely phenomena going on. I haven't got a clue yet. The best way to approach measuring things, our normal standards would be length, girth, and width, and time, space and time. That is okay for physical plane, but when you're trying to translate into multi-dimensions, which use a different construct, it's not appropriate. That's where holographic systems come in more, because their systems of measurement are in information and resolution of information rather than space-time.
So I take it on these different dimensions, there's actually different entities. Is that correct?
Well, you mean Buckaroo Banzai in the seventh dimension? Yeah, there you go. That's a good movie. I love Buckaroo Banzai. No, there's something else going on, like Jet Li and The One, where he battles himself and takes on the kinds of, I don't know, 0-point energy, what do you want to call that, of each multiple dimensioned individual he kills. And at the end of the movie, it's pretty interesting. They have Time Lords that are out there trying to keep people from creating anomalies and doing naughty things. And there's probably, if man could conceive of such a concept, and we're only in 4th grade, it's probably true and even more.
Wow.
We haven't begun yet.
So we're not even scraping the surface, is what you're saying?
I'm sorry?
We're not even scratching the surface of this stuff yet.
At this juncture, we don't even have concepts of it yet.
We can't actually comprehend it, probably, Doc. And one thing I love
it's the imagination. It isn't the mathematics that makes it real. That's the creepy part of the whole thing. There's something more going on here. And imagination is basically reality, as I understand it. And as such, then it's possible to change the movie. That's why
people need to be very careful what they wish for, in my opinion.
Well, there you go. We get it. That's it. That's why in sex magic, Mass of the Holy Ghost, that place. This is the Masonic secret. The thought that occurs at the moment of climax happens. Now, I've seen this in my studies of magic with voodoo, where they will cut the throat of a chicken and their blood spurting out, and the emotion of survival and blood and all of the rest of it is a tangible energy that can do work. And if you can harness it, Tantra, where you allow the Kodash or higher forms of orgasm to control that energy, you can, as Aleister Crowley, create a magical child. His book, The Magical Child, was about World War II as a construct that was a child that was created in ritual. And ritual is the celebration of myth. It is the idea of taking archetypal levels of encounterment, like metaphor, and then directing that with your thoughts.
And Doc, when you're talking about magic, you're not actually meaning people pulling cards out of their sleeve. The way I understand it is magic is a way of actually changing consciousness, is it not?
Well, that's sleight of hand. That's legerdemain. The idea, that's the very lowest level of sleight of hand. Magic usually, by most people's definition, is got physics at some century. No matter what it is, at one century, it would see it as magic, and another, it would be technology. Breaker 17, come on, that's ESP. There we are. You have telephones. You have telepathy and clairvoyance. You have pictures from satellites. That's astral projection and da-da-da. So each century, as we have a relationship to a meme or concept of the way something might be, we have metaphor in that. And in fact, with ESP, it's always in terms of one of the five senses: clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairascension. You know, one of the, it's expressed to consciousness because consciousness is locked in matter, just like they call Cal, K-A-L. It's the mind is locked into matter and you're stuck here in four space. However, you have elements of you that transcend space-time. Your gut, for example, your instincts are beyond space-time. There is a cross time dimension of who you were at this moment, who you were in the past, in the future. I was going to give you a simple metaphor. When I was taking certification as a hypnotherapist, Gil Boyne School, one of the requirements is that you go through revisioning. You go into a regression, take you back into a previous part of your life where trauma might have occurred, and revision that and bring you back forward so that you had a different relationship to your fear of spiders or boogeymen. And what normal protocols were at the time I was taking it is they want to go back to past lives. So my professor that taught me, Lou Libides, very special hypnotist, he said, well, if I can take you into a past life, I could just as easily take you into a future life. How many of you would like to be progressed into the future?
Oh, definitely.
And so we did it. We did it. Okay. So here's what happened. The problem is when I went into the future, because of my memory, I was able to remember all the history of how I got there. It's kind of creepy. And so what happened is I was left. Okay. So we're in the future. And what I was, all of a sudden I'm in the future. I'm one of a triad. It took three entities to form a new cycle, if you will, or not pair like male and female. There were three of us. We were in a craft that was not physical, and we were sliding sideways slowly with our minds down into a place called Sachkan, which was geometry. And with that evolvement, when he brought me back to the present, I remembered my entities' ancestral memories, and there was this connection of who I am and who I will be. And now I can candidly, accurately say from hypnosis, I am basically a time traveler. I have not even been born yet, and I'm here to talk to you. And that's a metaphor of what's really going on right now.
And is that true of all of us, Doc, or is it only certain people? I mean,
That question of the century. Go figure. What do you think?
I think that would be apt for all of us, I would say.
Okay, so then it comes back to what is memory? Memory, it actually, time, according to Robert Ornstein, is a duration of consciousness. It's the way you organize your memory. And, so our show started at such and such a time, and it will end in such and such a time, and that's the way you're going to filter this experience.
So just by merely ordering what happens, that is what gives us the perception of time.
So I taught SEALs how to change their perception of time with breath. That was one of the protocols in my Power Tools book. I taught them that they were in an altered state, certainly not as lucid as you would be right now, except that the precision of their movements was so precise as that their form of boxing became paranormal by learning how to control their perception of time with breath. It's a technique.
So
And
was this
so-
something that all SEALs had to do, or was this just a
Well,
bonus if they
when you
could do it?
stress in extreme stress, where you're in extreme danger, everything slows down. That's the state of consciousness. I trained SEALs how to box in.
And that's the kind of state of consciousness I take it when you're in a car crash, something like that. It seems like everything is slowing down.
It's correct. And you do this as part of your breath, and you do this as a part of your autonomic functions, but you can change your breath in such a manner as to garner more information in the time bubble that you have created out of a singularity. You do that with your first breath. Now, there's a metaphor for you to stew on for a long time. It all begins with air, taking in and taking out. And let me say this, this is the first state of you now getting what I'm really trying to give you as a gift. In time travel, the movie you want to watch is Astral City. I've talked about it on other shows, but it's a doctor that's watching himself die on an operating table. And then at the moment of his death, what happens next? And let me tell you, it's non-denominational. It's in Portuguese. You're going to need a English subtitle, box there. But it's excellent. And it's non-denominational, and it's not Christian or not Christian. There's heaven. Heaven is going home, Astral City. And it is, again, a metaphor. All of you are time travelers.
And Doc, I love how you always refer to movies, because on this show, it's something I use a lot. I think it's a very handy tool.
There's a lot of messages.
Yeah, exactly, Joe.
Yeah.
I was just going to say to the Doc, when you look at, like, so if you brought up Interstellar, are they hiding things in plain sight? Are they trying to normalize information that is about to come out? Or am I just overthinking it all?
Well, yeah, there it is, the chicken or the egg. Actually, the egg rolled across the freeway and got driven over by a car. I don't know how the chicken got across. Basically, we are in like the physical plane. This place right now where you and I are talking is where we have gone to be sick spiritually. And that once you get it, once you have a sense of your purpose, then everything starts to flow. It's as if the universe wants that to happen. And that is a new chapter I'm writing in my newest book. It's called The Stanford Argument. It's about Stanford University and the difference of distinguishing intent from intentionality. Intentionality is not what happens, it's what you wanted to have happen but didn't. Missed it by that much. But intent is what actually happens at the end of the day. And you can do it kicking and screaming, which is called karma, or you can allow it to come to you like Buddha did. It doesn't matter. The intent is the what actually happens. So when you use words like, I'm going to try and do something, you have already acknowledged you're going to fail right out of the gate. Now, I'm not even talking about neurolinguistics. To try and do something is leaving you in out of no excuses. And the other part is true will. What you actually, at the end of the day, what actually happened. Now, there's lots of different ways to see what happened. That's the glass half full and the glass half empty. And the third glass next to it has got yellow liquid in it, and I say that one's full of piss. But, well, it's a metaphor, again, of the way you choose to look at something. You have either gotten something or you have lost something. What is that having lost something going to do to internal landscape and the structuring of the water inside your organs?
And Doc, is everything predestined? Do we have a path? Does it matter? Will we always end up where we were meant to be?
I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't believed it. That's what your upper brain is about, to make everything you believe true. So you can Pollyanna it, or you can self-style it, or you can.
When I look at this,
danger, Will Robbins, danger. I mean, there's ways of approaching this, of understanding what your purpose is here. Listen, man has only responsibilities, not rights. It's a responsibility for the thought you choose to entertain. If it's not where you want to go, why are you playing with it? You're going to make it. That thought, just by originating there, is going to make it happen. And so you have to be mindful in training your brain. And when I say mindful, if the thought could have come from you, like some neurotic part of self, not getting enough sex when you were 12, I don't know. I'm kidding. Or like others that feel they aren't worthy, and so they self-destruct. That'll be 12th house planets. I don't know how that all works. What I know is that when I take a metaphor of how I'm going to choose to see what's going on, somehow these ways allow more access than those ways. The example I have used countless times before would be the Christian standing at an open door when two aliens walk through. Would the Christian be able to see them? In the movie What the Bleep, it took the shaman to be able to see the ship out in the sea, because the natives had no concept, so they didn't see things that way. They didn't look for it. Now, I think there are people like me and you that are exposing other possibilities, and people are starting to look more. And so you're going to see schisms, like when Mac was doing alien abductions. Were aliens really taking people, or was something else going on? Mac's approach to that was that if it was God, there was going to be no way he could validate the existence of God. But what he could do was treat the trauma. What I'm now seeing is schisms like alien abductions occurring in other areas, like targeted individuals. The list goes on. And these are what I would call breakthroughs in the collective unconscious, where racial memories, genome type, blood types, things like that, are starting to vibratory or somehow allow a schism to occur, like Skinwalker Ranch, or where
kind of like
pops out of nowhere.
Is this kind of like 100th Monkey kind of thing, Doc? Is it?
Yeah. Yeah. Like that movie. There you go, the 100th Monkey. That's the idea of you're watching yourself, witnessing yourself walk through a play that's being directed by a higher part of self. It's not about consciousness. There's something else going on that is directing the show here. And the purpose is to have you train yourself.
Tonight's guest is Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and he is a pioneer in the annals of metaphysical and paranormal exploration. Dr. Miller began working in the X-Files world of Navy Intel and the SEAL Corps, then MRU, in the late 60s. His public collaborations and research continue. As an original Black Ops team member, Miller's research in the field of paranormal began as a graduate physicist working 11 years with Navy Intel. During this period, numerous foundational papers, including A Holographic Concept of Reality and Embryotic Holography, were written. His past and current writings and presentations reveal a depth of knowledge and practical experience in these three major fields. Number 1, alternative agriculture. 2, New Age physics. And finally, metaphysics. Dr. Miller now writes for Nexus magazine and is a preferred guest on internet radio. He is re-emerging at a critical time in humanity's evolution where metaphysics and the practical survival converge. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you on to the Freaky Friday edition of the Kev Baker Show. How are you doing, sir?
Hi. I was writing and texting. Sorry, and I'm awake. I was just gonna do a little thing about this leprechaun thing, and
I got you right off the bat.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
I
See,
fell right into that big hole.
Don't let them fool you for a second. You're absolutely right. They're 110% Irish.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
We're in Glasgow, Scotland.
I thought I saw Welsh in there somewhere, and it didn't deal with cranberries. I'll tell you.
So welcome to the show, Doc.
Finishing my story on the undergraduate school, hatchet courses in physics were to look like I'm going to burst into flames or something. I'm so excited. I'm drooling and excited about what I'm saying. Linus Pauling was a really weird person. He made all his graduate students sit in the front row. And if any of us in the big pit, these 420 people kind of thing, could ask a question he couldn't spontaneously answer, he would point to a graduate student and say, "That's your thesis topic." I couldn't believe it. So, of course, we were into the idea of trying to figure out questions that couldn't be answered. Did you know that there are, in my study, I am now encountering things that may not be known at any century. They don't work to eliminate the men from the boys. And that's what happened in my first years. But what happened was in my freshman year at the University of Washington, they had a thing called the John Dance Lecture Series, and visiting professors were offered to teach entry-level physics while they were delivering these super-duper papers. Richard Feynman and Linus Pauling were both my chemistry and my physics professors when I first took beginning physics. That's why I'm so creepy.
Well, Doc, I was actually doing a bit of...
Now, Richard Feynman was so cool. He was animated like me. The excitement is what you call inflammement, where